A Star is Born. Welcome back to Movie Recaps. Today, I'll share with you A Star is Born from 1937. This is an American Technicolor romantic drama film produced by David O. Selznick, written by William A. Wellman from a script by Wellman, Robert Carson, Dorothy Parker, and Alan Campbell, and starring Janet Gaynor as an aspiring Hollywood actress and Fredric March as a fading movie star who helps launch her career. The supporting cast features Adolphe Menjou, May Robson, Andy Devine, Lionel Stander, and Owen Moore. It was later remade 3 times, in 1954 starring Judy, Garland, and James Mason, in 1976 starring Barbra Streisand and Kristofferson, and in 2018 starring Stephanie Germanotta and Bradley Cooper. Bollywood has also released a movie named Ashikwi 2 on the same storyline. The movie begins with script notes of the beginning scene. Esther and her brother return home after watching a movie in a theater. Her father amusingly asks how it was. They gladly tell him it was nice. Soon, her aunt starts to taunt her for her interest in movies. Her father doesn't mind. But then she reveals that she thinks Esther wants to go to Hollywood. Esther wells up at her discouraging remarks and announces that she will go to Hollywood. Her grandmother follows her into her room and encourages her to chase her dreams. She tells Esther about how she struggled with her grandfather and chased their dream of freedom. She says that hearts are broken when you go after your dreams, but you should never give up. She gives her savings to Esther and tells her to be strong no matter what happens. Esther leaves for Hollywood. She arrives in LA. She sees the hand and footprints of famous actors. She stands on the footprints of her favorite actor, Norman Maine, and rents a room at a hostel. Esther tries to land a job as an extra, but so many others have had the same idea that the casting agency has stopped accepting applications. The casting agent shows her how they receive infinite calls and how they refuse every one. She tells her that her chances of becoming a star are 1 in 100,000. Esther says maybe she is the one and leaves the studio. The hostel owner introduces Esther to a new resident at her hostel, assistant director Danny McGuire. She asks Danny if he could hire her for a role. Danny tells her he himself is out of work and that she shouldn't have come to become an actress. She leaves upset. Danny follows her and asks to make it up for her with drinks. They become good friends. To celebrate Danny getting a job, they go to the Hollywood Bowl. Norman Maine comes to see the performance. He's drunk and gets into a quarrel with a photographer. He breaks his camera. Norman has his first encounter with Esther when he shushes her as she tells Danny that Norman is a wonderful actor. The hostel warden writes a note for Esther demanding her overdue bills and then tears it away. Esther lies in her letter to her grandmother that she's going to get a job soon and asks her granny to stop sending her more money. Danny offers Esther a job. She gets excited thinking it's an acting job, but Danny tells her that it is a one-time waitressing job at a fancy Hollywood party. He reckons it should be a great opportunity to meet directors. At the party, Esther mimics different stars to impress the directors. Meanwhile, a director tells the producer, Oliver, that he doesn't want to work with Norman. Norman has been a major star for years, but his alcoholism has sent his career into a downward spiral. Oliver covers up Norman's behavior and receives a call about him from the police. Norman has been caught driving an ambulance with full siren on. Oliver asks the police to keep the media away from the news. Norman arrives at the party, and Oliver tells him about the directors being reluctant to work with him. Norman doesn't pay much heed and goes to the bar to drink. Esther brings him some nibbles and he flirts with her. His controlling girlfriend arrives and asks Esther to leave. Norman follows Esther into the kitchen and helps her with plates. His girlfriend comes and hits him in the head with a tray. Norman falls down, his girlfriend accuses Esther of it and goes away. Esther tries to flee the scene, but Norman stops her. Norman elopes the party with Esther. He drops Esther at her hostel and asks her to come with him to his place, which she politely refuses. Norman is deeply impressed with her beauty. At the hostel door, he kisses her gently on the lips and she leaves. Just before she enters the hostel, Norman says, "Can I have just one more look?" Esther smiles. Norman calls his longtime producer and good friend, Oliver Niles, and asks him to give Esther a screen test. Then he finds Esther's hostel number from the directory and calls at 3 a.m. in the morning, much to the chagrin of the warden. Norman tells her about her screen test in the morning. Esther gets excited and tells Danny about it. She passes the screen test with the help of Norman Maine. She is invited into the same studio she came to work as an extra. The casting director tells her to work hard and the public may like her. When he is talking to her, Esther's mouth drops open and the casting director tells her to keep her mouth closed. When she goes out for her portfolio to be made, the typist isn't impressed by the fact that she comes from a farmland and her father is a farmer. He cringes at her name, Esther Victoria Blaguet, and they give her a new name, Vicky Lester. She practices and goes through several stages only for a tiny role. The makeup artists comment, "Why does she look surprised all the time?" They draw high, arched eyebrows on her face, but don't get satisfied. At a cafe, Norman comes to have his breakfast. Esther is sitting there practicing her only line in a movie, and Norman finds her. By now, they are seeing each other, and Norman asks her why she missed last night's date. She tells him about her role and asks if his movie began, but he says that they didn't find a girl to work with her. It suddenly hits him that she could do the role, and he brings Esther to Oliver. Norman persuades Oliver to cast Esther. When Oliver agrees, Esther faints with excitement. The preview is released. The film is called The Enchanted Hour. Esther sinks into her seat out of shyness as Norman kisses her on the screen. The film makes Esther an overnight success, even as viewers continue to lose interest in Norman. Norman and Esther escape from the back doors of the theater as Norman says, "A star is born." At a cafe, Norman tells Esther that she got everything she wanted in life. He has also got it, Esther's love, but it's too late. However, Esther tells him that it isn't too late. He can still give up drinking and they could be together forever. At a boxing match, Norman casually proposes to Esther, only on a condition that he will quit drinking. They tell Oliver that they are going to be married. They elope without publicity. The press agent, Matt Libby, tells Oliver that they should make their wedding a publicity event for the studio. However, Oliver doesn't agree. They get married at a county court with Danny as a witness. Libby arrives and taunts their idea of a secret wedding. They leave for their honeymoon, and Libby goes to the court and informs the media of their wedding from the court telephone. Norman and Esther enjoy their honeymoon in a trailer. Esther cooks, and they have a pleasant time. Meanwhile, the media keeps degrading Norman. The casting director discusses the media's partiality for Norman, and Libby says that no one would ever like Norman even after his marriage with Esther. Norman and Esther return from their honeymoon, and Norman shows Esther their villa. Libby arrives with a cameraman, and they take their pictures. Oliver arrives and takes Norman away for a discussion. Norman tells the cameraman that his camera-breaking days are over. Oliver tells Norman that his acting days are over. No one wants to sign him for their movies. Norman says he had given a hit, The Enchanted Hour. Oliver says he should keep trying to revert the audience's views and tells him that he is casting someone else with Esther in his next movie. Meanwhile, The Enchanted Hour becomes famous for Vicky Lester, Esther, instead of Norman. Norman's fan mail is very small compared to Esther's, and Oliver ends his contract with Norman. Norman stays sober for a while, but his frustration over his situation finally pushes him over the edge, and he starts drinking again. A journalist calls and asks Norman to use his affection with Esther to persuade her to make time for an interview with him. Esther arrives home late from work. She notices the glass, but she ignores it. Norman has prepared dinner for them. They make love when they hear the doorbell ring. It's the mailman with a package for Esther. He asks Norman for who he is, to which he replies, her husband. He asks Norman to sign for it and says, "Thank you, Mr. Lester." This pushes him over the edge. Norman comes inside and tells Esther about all the messages he had been taking for Esther and leaves. Esther is nominated for the industry's top award, the Academy Award for Best Actress. She wins, and when she's giving her acceptance speech, Norman enters the hall drunk and interrupts her speech. He drunkenly demands 3 awards for the worst acting of the year and accidentally slaps Esther when he dramatically swings his arms back. Oliver asks Libby to play the music, and Esther brings Norman to his seat. Out of embarrassment and guilt, Norman kisses Esther. Back at their home, Esther isn't excited about her award, but she cries, worried for Norman, while taking off his shoes. The next morning, Oliver comes to see them. He notices Esther's swollen eyes and asks why she's been crying. Esther tells him that Norman has gone to the sanatorium as he's really trying hard to quit drinking. Oliver suggests he should resume working and tells Esther he'll sign him up again. A few weeks later, Oliver visits Norman at the sanatorium. A stay at a sanatorium seems to cure Norman's increasingly disruptive alcoholism. Norman's caretaker stays by his side. Oliver offers him a side role in his upcoming movie, but Norman refuses. At a Christmas racing, a chance encounter with Libby allows the press agent to vent his long-concealed contempt. He blabbers about Esther and arouses Norman's anger. Norman hits Libby, and he hits him back. He falls as he is weak. Libby leaves, giving a taunting remark, and Norman drinks once again. Norman goes on a 4-day drinking binge. Oliver and a worried Esther wait for him when Norman calls to tell them that he wound up arrested for drunk driving. Oliver tells Esther not to join him in court as it will cause a bad publicity event, but she insists and goes with him. In court, Norman attends with the other drunkards. The judge recognizes him and pities him for his state. He sentences him to 90 days of incarceration, but Esther pleads with the judge to put Norman under her care. The judge, who is impressed with Esther's acting success, suspends Norman's sentence and puts Norman's custody into Esther's hands. Esther receives the bailed Norman from jail and they get captured by the media. Norman Maine released to the custody of Vicky Lester after drunk conviction. Esther decides to give up her career to devote herself to his rehabilitation. Norman overhears Esther discussing this plan with Oliver. Oliver commends her for being so loving and such a faithful wife. Oliver leaves, and Norman comes out and sees her crying. She makes up an excuse that she's crying because she's tired. Norman tells her he's going to be an athlete and wants to practice swimming. Esther asks if he wants company, but he tells her to make some soup for him. Esther leaves to make him soup, and Norman looks at her for the last time. Norman once more says the same words he said to Esther when he dropped her at the hostel. "Can I have one more look?" He takes off his robe and slippers at the shore and swims into the water. Norman drowns himself in the ocean. Newspaper headlines read, "Norman Maine's body found off Malibu. Ex-star perishes in tragic incident." Libby makes fun of him with a bartender. Shattered at the people calling out on her even at Norman's funeral, Esther decides to quit and go home. Showing up soon afterward is her grandmother, who has heard Esther is quitting. Her grandmother tells her of a letter Norman sent her when they got married. The letter stated how proud he was of Esther and how much he loved her. Her grandmother reminds her of the fact that she told her chasing her dreams wasn't going to be easy. Her heart was bound to be broken along the journey. Esther's secretary tells them that Esther's cab has arrived. Because of her grandmother's words and the reminder of Norman's deep love, Esther is convinced to stay in show business. She tells the secretary to send the cab back. At the premiere of her next film at Grauman's Chinese Theater, she arrives with Danny and her grandmother. Although she is broken, she puts up a lively face. Her grandmother is asked to say a few words into the mic. She gladly says that she is the person who kept Vicky Lester alive. Esther sees Norman's footprints and wells up. When Esther is asked to say a few words into the microphone to her many fans listening across the world, she announces, "Hello everybody, this is Mrs. Norman Maine." The movie ends with a script note. A very, very nice movie. Although the movie has been remade several times, I think the original one is the best. Be sure to like the video if you loved it recapped, and make sure you subscribe for more.